consul general. And I thought, gosh, we've really got to get you on to talk about your love of everything Italian and also your terrific career, acting career. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Deborah. I'm glad we got a chance to meet different times at different events in Los Angeles. And happy Italian American Heritage Month to you and to everyone. I'm so glad you were able to squeeze me in at the last few days of this important month in our
So
culture.
it's an incredibly important month, and I think it's really catching on even more so, right? Because our culture just has so much, that to offer from so many people, not just Italians, but everybody, right?
Well, and for me, I love the fact that Italian American culture has a month. But
Yeah.
it's 365 days of the year. And I'm always celebrating it. I'm always trying to share it with people who appreciate it and want to know more. And I always want to know more too. So when I'm meeting Italians, just want to be a sponge and take in their experiences from
Mm,
whatever region they're in. So
mm.
it's a 365 day a year event for me.
Now, you've got quite a long list of credits to your name. People might know you as Angelo from the show Melissa and Joey on the Disney Channel. That would be Joey Lawrence.
But Italian
Two
American.
Yeah, great Italian American. I didn't know that, by the way, until you told me that. So didn't realize that. We got to get him on. Two Scoops of Italy, which you shot outside of Rome. I believe we could see that on the Hallmark Channel. Please, people, look that up. And I think you shot that, what, in 2024? One of your more,
2024, and I think the streamers change a lot their
yeah,
content.
yeah,
It might also be available on Peacock
yeah.
in the States, but it's yeah, it premiered here on on Hallmark channel.
I always love to dial it back because I believe whoever we were as kids is who we are now. So, talk to me a little bit about where'd you grow up? I know it was back east in Brooklyn, and the influences, the Italian influences that you had growing up, and how you think it became part of your inner core.
So yeah, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My paternal grandparents were from Sicily. My maternal grandparents were from the Naples area. And my my father was the youngest of nine siblings. I'm the youngest of four siblings, and I'm the youngest grandchild. And sadly, my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, the Tuminias, passed away before I was born. So obviously I didn't get a chance to meet them, but I heard all of the stories about them. And while, the downside to being the youngest is you sort of get to miss out on things, but then there's other things that, become yours because you are the youngest. But I do miss the fact that a lot of my cousins and my brothers, when they had this connection to the patriarch and matriarch of the Tumminia family, and so I always wanted to know a lot more about who we were. And my father shared so many amazing stories about his parents and about growing up in Brooklyn. And a couple of the things, again, I think this kind of certainly connected me to being Italian because he talked about his Italian parents or his Sicilian parents. And I remember wanting to know more, as I said, but one of the most fascinating things was the day he told us, and I was young, so this is the mind of a child, that we were Roman Catholic. And that because the word Rome was in that in those two words, it meant I was Italian. And I think I went on a path to wanting to speak Italian and know a lot more about the Italian culture. And back in the day, when my grandparents emigrated to the US, they wanted to assimilate, become, an American. So there was a bit of a conflict with me wanting to know more about my Italian culture and experiencing stories of people who, yes, were Italian, but also wanted to uh, appear as American as well. But there
Yeah.
was no stopping me. By the time I got into the sixth grade, I was in an Italian language class, and I've been studying Italian for years since then.
Wow, they had a Italian language class back then in grade school, or did you take it separately?
Well, no, in New York City, of course, because, I think outside of Italy, New York City might have the largest population of Italian immigrants and Italian Americans. So yeah, it was my high school, my high school, my junior high school. If you look at the names in the yearbook, they're all Italian.
Yeah.
90% of them are Italian. So that wasn't unusual. And I certainly grabbed the moment to be able to speak Italian. The interesting thing is, so as I said, my paternal grandparents weren't alive, but my maternal grandparents were alive, and they spoke with a Neapolitan dialect.
Yeah,
So
same with mine. Yeah.
growing up, I thought that was Italian, and then I landed in Italian class, and it was two different worlds. I didn't understand what nothing the teacher was saying was matching
Wow.
what my grandparents were saying, and that's when I learned the concept of dialect. And there are so many dialects in Italy.
That is so true. And same with my family, Napolitan, they would call it. And I know growing up, they would all talk to Italian to one another. My grandmothers, I didn't know my grandfathers, to my parents. And the minute I walked in the door, that was the time, right? I walked in the door, boom, it switched to English, at least for my parents. My grandparents didn't, my grandmothers didn't speak any English. I didn't learn that well. I can understand it. That I can. So if somebody starts cursing at me in Italian, I will know. So I don't speak it all that well, but I do understand fairly well, which is why very often I go to some of these events and I can hear them, and I'm often like this, but I don't really say too much back in Italian because it's very broken up for me. I'm trying. I'm one of the slowest learners when it comes to the Italian language. It's just me, but I'm trying. I am committed to at least getting to a level one, being good enough to converse mildly, right?
And well,
Um,
the great thing about being in Italy is that a lot of Italians do speak English, obviously in the major cities. So you have that advantage, and then with a handful of phrases and your level one status, you'll be fine. But yes, if you need,
yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah, but I really want to be respectful when I go see my family. I've gotten to know all my family over in the Avellino region, and they don't speak a lick of English. So
Mhm.
it's very interesting. We've got Google Translate going on for us. And then I thought to myself, that's great, right? Because we can communicate, but do they really know the essence of the person? Google Translate is just straight on translation. It's difficult when you don't speak the language as well so that they can get a real idea of who you are. Are you a funny person? Are you, you know what I mean? Are you a serious person? But we try, and we've made such an effort to do that. Have you gone back to meet some of your family members in
Oh,
Italy?
absolutely. The
Nice.
Tumminia family, one of the benefits of social media and Facebook, for example, is I found a lot of Tuminias on Facebook.
Oh,
So I reached out to them, 2008, 2009, trying to connect the dots. And the interesting thing is that obviously, if they're in Italy, often their grandparents didn't emigrate to the United States. Everybody
right.
stayed. So their desire to connect the dots isn't as strong as mine. So once we would have some conversations if there was any overlap, but then it just became, well, this is not going to happen. Let's just appreciate that we share the same last name, and show me around Palermo, and most of them are in Palermo.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And I don't understand the Sicilian dialect at all. And I think a lot of Italians don't understand it. But again, Italy has so many dialects that it's not unusual.
Which one do you speak?
Well, it's standard Italian. That's what I learned in school. But, growing up with my maternal grandparents who spoke the Neapolitan dialect, there's words that, I'll use on occasion, and I'll get a laugh from Italians who speak standard Italian because it's clearly a dialect, and it almost sounds like it's out of a movie, a bad
Yeah.
way.
So, growing up in Brooklyn, where there were quite a few Italian families, what was it that got deep into your soul that you felt that being an Italian was so important to you? Was it your family? Was it cooking with the family? The nearby delis and butcher shops and restaurants? Was it the community outside? Tell me what it was.
Well, I think it was all of that, but
Ah,
I also grew up on television. That was part-time babysitter time. I was obsessed with TV, that box in the living room where these people would do things and either make me laugh or make me cry, and my family too. Um, and I'm watching TV as a young child. As I said, I was obsessed with it and I was mesmerized by it. But I really never saw a lot of people who reminded me of my family.
I
So,
agree.
so I think what made me think more about being Italian was I'm different. I'm special. We have this. The people on TV have turkey and meat and potatoes, and we have the kind of food that we have, and we have this way of expression, self-expression at a table, loud, love, fire, and that made me really proud of being Italian because I wasn't necessarily like the people on TV. Uh,
Yeah.
which was a great thing. And then the other thing about watching them on TV is that I realized that's what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
which led me to, to down the path to move to Hollywood eventually.
How did that go? Because I know that you studied at Georgetown, right? And you studied Italian, and then that became your minor. And that led you to go and study in Italy, in fact, right? Like, did you say to your family, hey, I'm going to go to Georgetown? I really want to be an actor. Like, what was that like? Because I remember when I said to my family, because at one time I thought acting would have been fun. But I was never really a good actress, so that wasn't going to happen. But they said, "Oh, go be a bookkeeper." I'm like, "A bookkeeper?" Because I was good at math, and I'm like, "Oh no, that's not in the cards for me." Like, was your family very supportive when you decided to get into the arts? Tell me about that.
Well, no, they weren't because, the arts are very unpredictable, not very reliable. A lot of people, it never happens for a lot of people. So my dad really wanted me to get a good job, go to a good university, and follow that path. But I was conflicted because I had such a passion for being Italian. I was thinking about moving to Italy at some point after high school, maybe even college. But then I had the desire to work in entertainment and move to California in Hollywood. So I really didn't know what to do, but I followed my father's guidance, and I went to Georgetown. But I also knew that Georgetown had a junior year abroad program in Fiesole, a little mountaintop hilltop
Mm.
town north of Florence. And it wasn't sort of like a wicked plan, but I just thought, oh, well, I can make my dad happy, follow a great professional path that is, reliable and, I can sustain myself and that sort of thing, but also go to Italy in the third year as a student. I get to Georgetown as an Italian major, as you said, and quickly find out that as an Italian major, I can't do the junior year abroad program. So my sophomore year, second year, I decided to, just take control of that, the narrative, and I switched majors. I became a political science major with an
Mm.
Italian minor, and then I was able to apply for the junior year abroad program in Fiesole and went there for education. And so it was all in English, but there was an Italian class during our studies, but everything else was Italian literature in English, Italian philosophy in English, art history, etc. But the key to your point before about learning languages, really the key is immersion. And once I was there, hearing Italian
Yeah.
all of the time certainly helped make me become fluent. And the interesting thing
Oh.
is, it also uh, made me lose my Brooklyn accent. So for the
Oh.
first 20 years of my life, I had a Brooklyn accent. I wouldn't say it was very thick, but it was there. And I was teased at college for my Brooklyn accent because here's this university with students from all over the country and all over the world. And, you know,
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. My early life, I grew up in New Jersey, and people are always saying, "Where's your Jersey accent?" And I never really had one. I just didn't. And then, of course, my family moved to Florida when I was a teenager, but I never had one, and I do not detect a Brooklyn accent out of you under no circumstance. So somehow it was washed away, which I imagine was pretty good for you getting into the arts and career. So here you are in Italy, you're studying in Italy, Italian political science. When you come out, what'd you do with that?
well, I got a job at a TV station between my
Oh,
junior year and senior year. And
Metro Media, right? Metro
Yes,
Media.
yes, yes,
I
yes.
told you I worked there as well in New York. And one of my first jobs out of college, I was a page. You just, that's what you do. Very interesting people that you meet. And then you could figure out very quickly, do you want that or not want that? So tell me how it went for you.
Yeah, yeah. I had registered with a temp agency back in New York, and I got an assignment for 2 days at this TV station. And I told my oldest brother that, this is what was happening. And I was like a kid at Disneyland or Disney World, depending on which coast you're in. And my brother, God bless him, said to me, "Why don't you ask them if you can be there for the summer?" Because it seemed like I was replacing someone who's on a summer vacation, and I did, and they gave me the job for the entire summer, and I was hooked because we got tickets to Broadway shows for free. I was, experiencing live television on a daily basis. The news was Channel 5 News. If it was Channel 5 back then, the news was being done there. So I was hooked. So went back to Georgetown for my senior year, and towards the end, I was offered a job back at Metro Media. And when I got there, everything had changed. It felt very different.
Oh.
And then I heard about a job at CBS. I applied for that, and I was working at CBS maybe within 2 weeks of being back in New York for my new life postgraduate,
Hmm. When
undergrad.
did when did you start acting? Because I know you've always, you've been on that line where you do you're a producer and you're an actor. That's a tough one. And I know, especially for actors, a lot of times they'll get into production to pay the bills, right? So tell me a little bit about that. What did you do first? Did you get into acting? Tell me about it.
So I moved to California. So I worked at CBS for 3 years. Was hoping I was going to get transferred from New York to Los Angeles, but in those days it was a different level. It was a different
Yeah.
environment. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I just gave myself a 3-year plan, and then I just picked up and moved to California. But I had acted in college. In fact, as an Italian major and then Italian minor, we were doing plays. We did adaptations of like Pirandello and other Italian playwrights, and we also took American TV shows, sitcoms, and 1-hour dramas, and adapted them to these small little vignettes, and would Americanize them. And typically, I would play the lead character.
Mm.
I'm not generally a ham in person. I can be shy, but in my Italian class, we had an amazing professor for most of the years at Georgetown. So I was very comfortable playing all of the lead roles. So that gave me acting experience in Italian. And,
Wow.
and then when I moved out to LA, I didn't really know how to get started as an actor here. But on the third day I was here, and three is my lucky number. A lot of things in my life happen with the number three. On the third day I was here, I got a job on an indie movie. I think it was an apocalypse movie with zombies and plagues and that sort of thing. And it was one of the most exceptional experiences of my life, because what it taught me was that the key to one of the keys to success in LA is associating yourself with producers who go from gig to gig to gig, and they like to bring people they've worked with, they know, they trust, and that's what happened working on that zombie apocalypse movie.
Well, hang
And
on. Were you an actor in the zombie thing or were you in production?
I was a production assistant, but then they needed some
A zombie.
additional zombies and people who were plague victims. So they put the plague warts on me, and I was, one of the victims. And then, but my career in production started to kicked in, and I landed at a production company, and I moved up the ranks pretty quickly, thank God. And there's ebbs and flows in the business. And when there was an ebb, I started to look for acting work. I got an agent, I got headshots, and it was very different back then. Now it's
It
all
was
done
it
digitally.
was I don't know how people are even getting work. I mean, imagine, you and I can certainly get a feel for each other through this Zoom, but I don't know. It's got to be very difficult to really, nothing really replaces a live body in a room,
No.
right? But this is just the way it's going, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's a good thing that you were there during that time, that you could, hustle and find an agent. How did you end up on the show with Joey Lawrence? That was a big one. It was a big get.
Yeah, yeah. So growing up on sitcoms,
Yeah.
filmed in front of a live TV audience kind of thing, that
Right?
phrase
Yeah.
sticks in my head. So I auditioned for a role, and they changed the script, and then there wasn't, and I think that role went away in the new script. But Melissa Joan Hart's mother, who was an executive producer, called me and said, "We want to work with you. We want to cast you. We're going to bring you back on another episode." And
Oh,
those things
wow.
always sound nice, but things happen. What if it doesn't happen? But it did happen, and they cast me as Angelo, the maitre d', as you mentioned earlier. And I got to work on a sitcom for an entire week. We did the table reads, we did blockings, and and it was one of the most exciting moments for me as an actor, again, because it was filmed in front of a live studio audience. And I just remember, the end, taking the bows like you're doing live theater, because
Oh,
it's live theater. It's just
yeah.
taped by 5 cameras all around you. And Joey
Um,
was exceptional.
he's a terrific guy. I know people who've worked with him. Obviously, you have. Terrific guy, supportive, right? But what did the folks back home say? What did mom and dad say? What did everybody say? Like, oh my God, he's on television. Like, what was that like?
Well, I had already done episodes of Charmed, The Shield, and Parenthood, LA Law, and a few other things. So they were, they were happy. Oh, and Vegas, Las Vegas with James Caan, who was Sonny in The Godfather. So to work with him, he teased me a lot on set, but all in good fun. I think, I hope. Anyway,
Why?
uh,
What do you
well,
mean?
because when you're doing your close up, and let's say you and I are in a scene together and we're doing my close up, you don't have to necessarily be there, but it's very kind for actors to actually, be off camera to read the lines so the other actor can do his or her close ups. Well,
Oh, I see.
he didn't want to do it, so I think I was reading with the script supervisor, but then all of a sudden he decided to do it. He decided to do it. So now I have two voices. I have his voice somewhere and then the script supervisor. So my head was looking, and he ribbed me for kind of like doing this crazy head spin, but I wasn't expecting to him to come back and just, insert himself in the scene as they were doing my close up.
What were you thinking at all this time? Because that's a big deal to get these shots on TV, right? I mean, you must have been like, oh my gosh, I want to star in my own sitcom. Like, what was going through your head? And also your family back east, because I know how that is. They're like, oh my gosh, it's not stable. But here you were finally showing up on TV in various platforms, right? And what was that like?
Well, I certainly wasn't making a living as an actor because back then it's always tough until it's not tough.
Right.
But it took for me to book an episode of Charmed, and my dad saw it, and he left me a message, and I think he finally understood it. I guess watching me on TV,
Wow.
that okay, because it was an episode, a Halloween episode, in fact, and we were all transported back to the 1600s, so we were dressed like people would be dressing in the 1600s, and I think he probably saw it in my eyes that yes, my son is doing what he wants to be doing, and he left me that message to that effect.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
everything. That's everything for him to
no.
say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It took a lot for him to make that phone call.
Now, moving to LA from New York, did you find your Italian people here? Because it's a little different than back east where they're sort of everywhere. But, you have to find your neighborhoods out here, right? Tell me, how did you find your Italian community? And then we'll talk a little bit about, some of the Italian restaurants you may frequent. Talk to me about how it was on the early side of your life here.
Well, I didn't. I couldn't find
Ah,
no Italian Americans here virtually. And then I realized, one of the lessons I learned at an acting school was output equals input. So the more
hmm.
you put out there, the more you get in. So I think I actively looked to find Italian American events or celebrating Italy. I didn't know about the Consulate General of Italy back then. I don't think the Institute of Italian Culture was around then, but needless to say, I was on a mission to connect. And then I started to meet Italian Americans here and there at acting class,
Ah,
and from New York. So we had that connection. Not only were we Italian, but we're from New York, so we spoke the same language, whatever that meant, because again, lots of dialects.
yeah.
And the interesting thing, we didn't talk about this, but from my experience in New York, the parents, the Italian American parents, generally the father was from Sicily and the mother was from Naples. That combo is very common. So a lot of my, at least my male friends who were Italian Americans, their fathers were Sicilian, and we spoke the same language, not necessarily linguistically, but we got it. This is what I learned from my mother. This is what I learned from my father, and trying to to make it happen and please both parents.
Mm.
But then I did find San Pedro, and back in the day, and that there were lots back then. There were lots of Italian restaurants and cafes. There was the Little Italy there. I didn't know about the Casa Italiana in downtown until a friend told me about it, but it was too late. I was already now then into the Italian American groove here.
Yeah,
Wow.
it takes time. It's not as easy as back east. I think the institute, the Cultural Institute, is absolutely phenomenal. They put on terrific programs, no matter what they do. It's always interesting. Spearheaded by our consul general. There's some terrific cultural things to do. I know you often show up at the Academy Museum where they show many films, right, as well. That's another place to get involved, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, once I discovered the Cultural Institute, it was a great source of feeding that appetite of Italian American culture and Italian culture. And it's they keep surpassing every year with the kinds of events they had. This year alone, we got to see Trudy Styler's documentary,
Oh,
Posso Entrare, and that it was perfect timing because there's a segment in her documentary about women who are experiencing domestic violence, and I was producing a short documentary on women who are in Italy experiencing domestic violence. So it's the Cultural Institute is an amazing place to network and to get another education and to improve your education, expand your education in all things Italian.
100%. It really is fantastic. Everything they do there is so well curated. Tell me a little bit about what you're producing that you just mentioned.
So it's a short documentary called Per chi, and per chi means in English means for whom.
Hmm.
And my producing partner, he's directing this short film. We made it about a year ago, and now we're doing the film festival circuit. His name is Alessandro Spallino. He's from Novara, Italy, and it's about this organization called Viva Vittoria. And it's a nonprofit, what we call a nonprofit here, and they raise money and awareness for women who are experiencing violence against them.
Mm.
But what they do is all of their volunteers crochet and knit these blankets, and then they display them in the piazzas of the Italian cities, and they sell them. It's a spectacular view, and I've seen the drone footage of these enormous, this one gigantic blanket made up of small blankets, and they sell these blankets and make money and raise money for Viva Vittoria. And there's over the organization exists in over 30 Italian cities. But our film focuses on the angels at Viva Vittoria, the women who actually do the crocheting and the knitting and the sewing. And their stories are compelling too. Certainly, they're not experiencing, sadly, gratefully, that they're not experiencing the violence, but they have their own stories, how they have this need to help others. Maybe they were blessed with something, maybe there's a void in their lives, and it's wonderful 21-minute short film, and it'll be on the festival circuit very, very soon.
Would you tell us? Because I really want to see it. Make sure that I get to see it.
Absolutely. And I shout out to the Consul General of Italy, Raffaele Valentini, for supporting the project. We are very grateful for that. And then Emanuele Amendola, also very supportive of the film, and the entire staff at the Consul General. They've been gracious, and we've had a lot of we received a lot of support from Italian organizations, and especially the organization that was featured in Trudy Styler's documentary called Forti Guerriere. They're based in Naples, and that sadly that organization was born out of a tragic incident. A wife lost her life to her husband making some bad choices.
Mm.
But
Yeah, that's true. And then she lives there primarily with her husband in Italy. They've
yes,
immersed themselves in the culture completely. Absolutely.
Sting.
Yeah, with her
Yeah.
husband Sting. She's magnificent, and she really gets behind projects that are so valuable. And I love the space that you're in here too. I call it sort of the backstory. This short that you're doing, it's sort of the backstory, right, of these
Yeah.
women and the work they're putting into this. I really love this. I also want to talk about Two Scoops.
Two
Now
scoops.
that's something you acted in, right? Because you go both ways, right?
Yes.
You're a producer, you're an actor. Tell us about Two Scoops, which
So
was done in Rome. That must have been fun.
yes. So I have my Italian citizenship. I got that in
Oh yeah.
2000. I got that in 2009. And I mean, I guess I was always Italian citizen because of Giudice Sangue, just never made it official. So did it 2009. And that allowed me to get work in Italy
Ah.
as a resident, as a non-resident, whatever the status was at the time. And I met a manager at a film festival in Ischia, just an island off of Naples, and she decided to rep me, and then she started submitting me for acting jobs. And one of the projects was this romantic comedy called Two Scoops of Italy. I auditioned three times, and I said, as I said earlier, three is my lucky number. And on the third, auditioning for the third character, I got the role of Mario Chiellini, who's the olive oil proprietor. It's a rom-com. You can imagine this American woman frustrated with her life goes to Italy for 2 weeks to find herself. She goes to this small town and meets this man. She doesn't want to fall in love with him, but of course, it's a rom-com, so they do. But what I loved about the character Mario Chiellini, he's the one who really, he for the first time publicly acknowledges that they're a couple. They don't even realize that they're falling in love, but he has this, this sixth sense. And then he leaves them with a secret about what the man is looking for. So yeah, and it was a wonderful experience working outside of Rome on a vineyard. And what an amazing cast and crew of mainly of Italians, of course, who just have so much passion for what they do. And look at the tradition of Italian cinema,
Mm.
trailblazers that, make them proud and make them want to make great content.
And continue to. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So you must be, when you look back at life, that kid in Brooklyn with an affinity for being an Italian kid, loved acting and film and producing, and you look at where you are now, you must feel pretty proud, huh?
I do, and and just to give you a little more about me. So I went. We did move to Staten Island. My father wanted to have a backyard and just more peace because Brooklyn can be a little noisy and congested.
Yeah.
And so but the great thing about living there was I was surrounded by Italian Americans too. That for me, that
Oh
was,
yeah.
it was a constant exposure and reinforcement of the culture that I love so much, the traditions. So yeah, absolutely, very proud. It's not an easy business. Entertainment is not a easy business, that's for sure. But ebbs and flows. But I'm used to it and ride the wave. And when it happens, it's amazing. And then when it doesn't, you sort of prepare for the next wave, that's how I think of it.
Did you ever think of living in Italy, getting a residence there and just staying? Tell me about it.
Well, absolutely, yes. So since I got my citizenship, I've spent a lot more time in Italy
I'll
working
bet.
there. I've got to, be there for chunks of time because sometimes the production schedules aren't always available. So I'll just go in advance and spend some time there auditioning for other roles, um, working on other projects as a producer, developing, which I have several others in the pipeline, all based in Italy. So yes, and in fact, during the pandemic, once Italy was hit very badly, as you remember.
Terrible.
But once the doors opened and it seemed like it was better, I went back twice looking for a place, and
Mm,
both times there was a huge spike in the virus, and I just got on a plane and came back home.
yeah.
But yes, I think I will definitely make it semi-permanent. Yeah, the Sicilian flag has that figure with three legs, and three is my lucky number. And I'm also my family's also Neapolitan. I don't want to dismiss that, but like the Sicilian flag, the figure with the three legs, I feel like I'm in three. I have my legs in three places: L.A., New York, and Italy. If I'm not in Italy permanently, as long as I'm there, for a good amount of time each year, I'm happy.
Before I let you go, you have a really neat story about a stoop. Anybody who's from back east knows what a stoop is, and if you
Yes.
don't, James will start to tell us. Go ahead, please. And this has to do with
Well,
your grandparents, right?
yes, and some of the questions you ask your guests is, have they been back to places where their family was from? And I've been to Naples and I've been to Palermo, but I've never had any information where my grandparents lived in those places. Anyway, and as I said, I had never met my paternal grandparents. I was 2 years ago, there's a movie called Past Lives, and absolutely fell in love with it. And these two young kids have a crush on each other. They're from South Korea. Bless you.
Thank you.
And one of the girl moves away. 20 years pass, and the young boy, now a man, wants to find her, and he finds her in New York City. And she's living on the Lower East Side with her. She's happily married to an American. The South Korean woman is happily married to an American, and they're living on East First Street in the Lower East Side. And I don't really know the Lower East Side. I know other areas of Manhattan, but it's not a place that I spend much time in. Coincidentally, I was invited to be a jury member at a festival that was happening on the Lower East Side. So now I'm thrown into that area physically and also seeing it in this movie at the same time, Past Lives. And I saw Past Lives 5 times. At the end of the movie, the married couple, they land on a stoop on East First Street. And there was just something. And so I immediately reacted to that because it's a very emotional scene. But for me, growing up in New York City, as you said, there's that stoop culture. And hours of my life were spent on a stoop with the neighbors talking, that sort of thing.
So amazing. It's amazing to do that. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So but there was something watching this movie, especially the final moments on the stoop, in the Lower East Side, on First Street, that I couldn't put my finger on it.
I
Anyway,
was drawing you. It was drawing you.
something other than what was happening. I don't know, no spoilers about the movie. I go home for Christmas and I go to that location. I love visiting locations of
Yeah.
movies. And I sat on the stoop and I looked at I walked past the park that the couple walks past by, all those kinds of things. And I just I don't know, felt relief, joy, closure, whatever. I go home and my brother hands me this document that it traced our family, the Tumminia family genealogy. It was a very thick document, and I happened to peruse it, and I noticed that the address of my paternal grandparents' first home as a married couple was right across the street from the stoop where the movie took place. I'm getting chills right now, and I think that was, the title's Past Lives. Do the math. I was meant to, to connect with them. So I never saw my grandparents' homes in Sicily or Naples, but I got to see there by following my passion of cinema. Found their
They
home.
they were drawing you there. I really
Yeah,
believe in that, and I'm sure you do too. They were absolutely behind you showing up there. You felt it instinctively.
yeah.
There's some kind of genetic memory going on there. What a beautiful, beautiful story and a great one for us to end on, James. I'm so grateful that you joined us. Is there anything else you want to tell our audience about you, what you're working on, or anything else?
Well, the only thing I'll say is like my grandparents left Italy for a better and new life, but what they brought with them was Italy, and all those traditions. And I'm so glad that even though they wanted to assimilate, they certainly made sure that their children and their grandchildren knew about their culture, the Italian traditions, their heritage. And I'm so blessed to have those stories and those memories and those moments passed on to me, and I celebrate them every day.
Yeah, and you celebrate them by showing up to just about everything Italian here in Los Angeles.
You invite
So,
me, I will show up. Yes.
yeah, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. So, James, thank you so, so, so very much. James
Sure.
Tumminia, actor, producer, lover of all things Italian. Um, and it's just been a thrill, really, to interview you. Do you have a favorite Italian restaurant or place that you like to go here in LA that you could share?
Well, Italy is they have restaurants there, but Italy is the Disneyland of Italian specialty markets and great food at their. So I love going to Italy. I love Toscana in Brentwood, Cafe Angelino near the Beverly Center, Mozza, of course, their pizzeria, and then their Osteria Mama. So many great places. But I would like to tell you one thing before we leave. Another thing my father told me, in addition to revealing that we were Roman Catholic, which made me feel really special, he also told us the name. He explained to me the name, the origin of Tumminia, and it means an ancient grain. essentially a flour. So when I went to Palermo, one of the first times I actually saw pastas made with Tumminia flour. And
Oh,
when I go to restaurants, pizzerias, you can like here getting a gluten-free pizza dough is very popular. You can get pizza dough made with Tumminia flour. So if you want to buy any Tumminia pasta products, they're on Amazon. I've done that many times as gifts. But yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to share with you. I'm yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. I'm going to
Yeah,
look
yeah.
for that. That's really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today as part of our Italian American Heritage Month. I'm just honored to have you here. I really am.
Great to
Yeah,
see you today.
absolutely. And everybody, you could find our interview on YouTube, Deborah Cobelt Live, and also Little Italy podcast on YouTube. We post it also on Facebook. We do little promos on Instagram eventually when we get to them. And then, of course, as an audio podcast, you'll find us on iHeartRadio. Oops, just dropped something on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and just about anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Look up our names, Deborah Cobalt Live, Little Italy podcast, and you'll find my interview with James. It's really been a pleasure to welcome
Thank
you
you so
here.
much, Deborah.
Please, share with your friends. And if you have any great story ideas, I'm always up for them. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and happy Italian American Heritage Month. Bye bye.
Bye.